Hello and welcome to the New Rules of Sex Summit, your sexual re-education. My name is Dr. Lauren Brem, and I am here today with Lisa Kinsella, founder of Luwi and sexual health advocate working to disrupt the sexual health industry. Lisa, welcome.
Hello, hi, nice to see you today.
Yeah, you too. We got to speak on the phone, but here we are on this summit and we get to talk about sexual health and the reality of erections and pleasure inequality. Like, we've got such great topics to talk about today. But before we dive into any of that, I'd love for you to just tell people what Luwi is, since we've got your brand, you're the founder of it. Because I know when I heard of it, when I first heard Luwi, I'm like, what is that? I had to go to your website and look it up.
Oh, great. Yeah. Well, so Luwi stands for Let Us Wear It. And it's a new product for women and for sexually receptive community that is protection and contraception that feels better than a condom. It works differently than a condom.
Mm-hmm. And why does it feel better than a condom?
Well, it's made, it completely lines the inside. So it is for the vaginal or the anal canal, and it is really a second skin. It's made out of medical grade polyurethane that is half the thickness of latex, and it also transfers heat. So being able to provide greater sensation obviously is a big issue, and that condoms take away. So
yeah, absolutely. A lot of men complain about that. So Let Us Wear It. By us, you're referencing women. So this is a condom that typically women put inside of themselves, and they can put it in up to 8 hours before a sexual experience.
Absolutely. It's, sexually receptive. So it's worn on, vaginally or anally. And we found lots in the LGBTQ community that are really liking Luwi too. We're for sale in Europe today, and we're working through the FDA processes to bring it to the US. And we're really excited about it. It's a lot of fun. There's about 150 condoms on the market, and they're all predicated on the male physiology. And so we're bringing a product that is for the other half of the population, right?
Yeah. There's so many topics to dive into with this, but I thought what you just talked about I've heard it said this is the product, it's the condom you don't need an erection for. So I thought, as someone who has had a lot of sex, I always love to tell people that, men don't just show up to sex with these really strong erections. Like, their psychology affects it, their tiredness, their hydration, their insecurities, all of these things. And then on top of all of that, you ask them to put a condom on where they don't transfer, they don't feel heat, like you said, and it's tight, and they often lose their erections. And I think it's really important to have that conversation so that men understand that, so they don't feel insecure, but also so women understand it. Because I've heard women say, oh my gosh, he's not attracted to me, he lost his erection. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Men lose erections, all the time, just like we kind of go in and out of arousal as well during sex. But why is it with Luwi that you don't need to have an erection?
Absolutely. Well, it's totally different from a condom, right? So it can be put in 8 hours before you need it. And because of this material that's so different from latex, it heats up to the body's temperature. And so, and it's transferring that heat. So it can be in place without an erection. And, and you can put it in before there's erection, and maybe one goes away, maybe it comes back, because that's just normal. And Luwi is still in place. So, being able to set us all up for success is what Luwi's all about, right? We know that the NIH says that the usage rates of condoms are about 26% today. Well, that is directly correlated with the highest rate in history and growing of STIs.
I know, it's so hot right now.
Yeah, so clearly we need a new standard operating procedure, right? It's been 100 years and the condoms haven't really changed. And so, it's about time. We've changed. Society has changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you sent me some Luwis in the mail. And so I have experimented some with them. And I have to say, it is a very different experience of sex. It's a very different paradigm, you know, as someone who is used to men putting a condom on, and that experience of sex was very different than wearing it myself. It feels very different. You feel it on the outside of you. You know, the man had to put lube on his penis to then enter. So I wasn't expecting that. I was like, oh, I didn't even think of that, as opposed to a condom that just slides on and then the woman has the lubricant. So it was like this whole, like we were having this very different experience of sexuality. But the men reported that it felt amazing, that it felt like they weren't wearing a condom, and they were, you know, they were entering into this safe place, but it wasn't that restricted feeling. I noticed I felt a very different experience, like closer to my partner. It was more like not using a condom, but then at the same time, I sort of missed the old way too, in a way, like, because I was so used to that sort of tight feeling, like entering, like this was a very different thing. So, and I like what your packaging said, which was, don't just use this once, like you need to explore with this. And I thought, there's so many, and I kind of like the idea of like the his and hers condoms, and you could use them at different times during the sexual experience if you wanted. You could start with this or use that. You know, changing positions. I had to kind of alter it inside of me as well. So it's definitely, I think I talk with a lot of women who are afraid of their genitals and don't want to touch them. And this actually kind of forces you to really get intimate with your own genitals, which I think is important, and kind of know where it is, and be more conscious of the area. So it just opened up like a whole new world. I mean, this is really a very different product, and you know, it's empowering for women. They get to wear it. It prompts all this conversation with your partner about feeling and sensation and things. So it's a really interesting, really cool.
I'm so glad you liked it. Yeah, that's what we hear. We hear that all the time, how people, men and women, come back and say, oh my gosh, this is so much better than the condom. How, you know, so when people are aware of it, it is preferred 100 out of 100 times.
Yeah.
And it is exciting. I mean, you know, I got into this. I mean, the whole catalyst for Luwi was I was looking for a hormone-free contraception. You know, after I'm a breast cancer survivor and can't take synthetic hormone, can't take the pill. And while I was looking and searching, I saw the STIs that are at epidemic levels, and they're causing infertility, and so many are antibiotic resistant, so they're not curable. And you know, the shame that comes with that, and so many are asymptomatic, so the damage is done and you don't even know it. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is the option? And when I learned that the only option for me was, for all of us, was to rely on someone else to wear something that is desensitizing, right? And I thought, okay, this just does not make sense. I want to be in charge of my body's health, and I want something that feels good. And so, yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of a learning curve with the procedure, right? But once you get over that, it's great.
Yeah, I had to adjust the ring that goes on the inside of you that kind of holds it in, and then the ring on the outside I had to adjust too, because at one point it was sort of like right on my clitoris, and I had to sort of adjust it. And so there's definitely a learning curve. But you know, continuing what you were saying with the STIs, you know, I'm very open with people about, because I think we need to de-shame STIs and UTIs as well. And I've had chlamydia twice. And once it was because a condom was pulled off and I didn't know. And the second was because the person I was with, I could tell they were becoming my boyfriend. We couldn't have sex because he kept losing, or penetrative sex, because he kept losing the erection. And I finally said, it's fine. I'm sure it's fine. I was tested. He wasn't tested. And I got chlamydia a second time. And I just, you know, I think, you know, even as sexual health educators, you know, we know everything we know about STIs, but the question is like, well, why don't people use condoms? We have greater accessibility to condoms than we've ever had, more and more sexual health education, though it needs to increase, and the highest rates of gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis that we've ever seen, you know. And so we asked that that prompts the question, why aren't we putting condoms on? And a big thing is like when you're intimate and you want to have penetration with your partner and they're just losing their erection, you go, okay, fine, let's risk it. And Luwi gives you the option. Maybe you've tried the regular male condom first and then you're like, I have another option. Grab that condom, grab some lube, let's try this. And then at least you can play with maybe a half erect penis or something and then see.
Absolutely. I mean, there's that moment where you have to put on a condom, right? Well, you know, if that's missed or if it's not there or, you know, because it is a I mean, latex is desensitizing. I mean, it doesn't transfer heat. It is thick. And Luwi is about half the thickness. And because it does conduct heat, it's very different, as you know. And so being in a situation where you can put it in well before, that increases the opportunity for successful, smart sex, right?
It's warmed up as it's hanging out inside of you.
And having something in place for 8 hours means you're more apt to be safe. I mean, we all want to be protected. We all want to be smart, right? And so we just, you know, Luwi is there to set us all up for a greater level of success and, you know, get usage rates up. And, you know, it's exciting.
Yeah. And what do women share? Because the other thing I noticed was because it's slightly on the outside of you, I know that gives some additional protection to the perineum. But when women are wearing it around, I mean, I was aware of it making sounds or kind of moving around a bit. Like, what do women share about that? Do they just, I mean, I put it in just prior to sex, so I wasn't wearing it with my clothes on, but what do women share about that?
Well, we find that a lot of women who are in a relationship, that's who likes to try it first. It's almost like that safe environment that they feel like they can have a conversation. And we hope to get to a place where, you know, people are comfortable and it's well known. And I think a lot of times it's not yet known because we've just started. We launched in London. And so people say, well, my boyfriend loved it. You know, and when they are feeling safe enough to try it and, oh, maybe it didn't work the first time, okay, let's try again. And they get to that point where maybe the second or the third time it feels natural, then it's great. And they are really seeing that the difference in the sensation is dramatic. And we all, I mean, even if you're in a monogamous, not, you know, tested relationship, there are other times where, I mean, maybe, for example, new moms who are nursing and they can't take hormone pills and they're not ready for a second baby. And we all know the myth of you can't get pregnant while nursing, right? And, you know, it's a great time.
I talked to my friend who got pregnant 2 months after she had twins. It was like 3 girls practically.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You absolutely can get pregnant nursing. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, and so many people have written to, you know, be Facebook Messenger or Twitter and said that they got pregnant on the pill. And so, you know, even if there is that long-term relationship and, you know, there is no, it's still a big risk. I mean, you know, you want a hormone-free contraception. You want a contraception that you know is going to work, that feels good to him too. And I think the women who are in couples, I find, are the ones that they're able to communicate more openly with their partner. And when he's saying, oh, wow, this feels great, then they feel fabulous about it, right? So we have to get from not knowing about it to feeling comfortable. And that's a process.
Yeah, and it's great to have just another option, again, for the person who loses their erection or who's fighting you on it and says, that thing feels terrible, can't we do it without? And you don't even have to have that, either or. You can be like, well, I have something else, and then, you know, you put it on and kind of hold it in place and put some lube on the penis while he enters, and then be like, see, it's not, this is something different that we can enjoy. And I think it would be very kind of a healthy rewiring for men too, to, you know, again, one of my friends she's a big advocate of that we need to use condoms in pornography because these are images and a sexual script that we share as a culture. And if we, you know, and other people say, no, we should have porn without condoms because, you know, we have a right to that and that fantasy and the actors get tested. But when as a social story, that's just what happens. A condom goes on and you have sex. And that is just a part of our sexual script that this is going to help protect more people. And your product is is that story and changing it in a way that involves even more, again, like communicating with the partner. I was very glad to do it with someone that I felt safe with, because I'm like, okay, get ready for this. Like, this is a very different experience. Like, something's inside of me and they're like looking at it, and you got to go in the center of the circle, not to the side of it. And like, you know, it was this whole thing. So it was definitely, I could see it being more for couples, though you could use it on a first experience, and definitely as a great like second option if you're losing an erection or the guy's fighting you, which I love in your promo video, by the way, when the guys show up in the t-shirts and all the excuses for not wearing a condom, like, I love you, like, I was just like, what are the other ones?
Is that not real? That's just totally real.
I've heard every one of those.
We all have. That's not
pull out. I love you. I've just been tested. And what was the fourth one? Like, so funny. Yeah, heard all of them.
Yeah, it's too tight.
Yeah, it's too tight. Oh yeah, that's another one. Yeah. So
or, you know, people say, oh, how about anal? You know, it's really, you can take the inner ring out and use it for a lining for the anal canal. And that, you know, so many people say that is preferred because they don't have to worry about contraception. Well, you need protection there too, right?
Yeah.
And you even need more lubrication. And so Luwi provides that. So,
yeah.
I mean,
that is a really big deal too, because that's one of the higher risk forms of sex, having anal sex. It's, you know, these high rates of syphilis that we're seeing are with men who sleep with men. You can, if you create any damage to the wall of the rectum, any semen that gets ejaculated goes directly into the bloodstream. So the vagina has some protection with the mucosal membrane and the immune system. And if you have little micro tears in that rectum wall, any ejaculation goes in, and anything they have, you now have. And so, yeah, condoms are even more important. And it's such a sensitive area that I imagine that the polyurethane that transfers the heat must be just fantastic for that particular type of sex.
Yeah, I mean, everyone comes back. The reviews are awesome, and we love that. You know, I mean, I think about just basic forms of protection, and, you know, like a seatbelt, for example, and we all get in our cars and we all buckle our own seatbelts. And so, you know, can you imagine if we weren't able to buckle our own seatbelt? We had to rely on someone else, or if that seatbelt didn't feel good. I mean, you know, this is the same. But then we got into the car, and, you know, 1 in 4 times there was a crash. I mean, 1 in 4 is the STI rate, right? So being able to be in charge of our protection and have this alternative that also feels good, I mean, that's our mission. To enable the other half of the population to have something that also, by the way, feels much better.
Yeah. I mean, that's really empowering. And we want people to enjoy sex and have sex because it's so good for physical health and mental health. And, you know, as long as, you know, and we're so lucky, we live in this era of protection. I mean, back in the day, people were using all kinds of like leather and lamb like skin. Have you heard about like some of the original silk over their penis? Like, you know, back then it was like to protect against what they called venereal disease, but they were using it as, you know, to protect against that and pregnancy. And now we have these products that are tested in labs and totally safe, and it's fantastic. I mean, it's really the foundation of a sexual revolution, and people having sex and enjoying sex, which, you know, everyone in our modern era, we all want access to sex. We all want to be having a great sex life. You know, it's not enough to, you know, just be married and have a couple kids anymore. Like, you know, everybody like wants it all, and sex is a part of that.
Absolutely. You know, and I think about you go to CVS in LA or Walgreens in Chicago, or, you know, Boots in London, and you look at the sexual protection aisle, and it's all predicated on the male physiology, and it's just outdated. I mean, that's just not, I think that in itself is perpetuating this perception that women's protection and pleasure is not important. And Luwi, we want to change that. I mean, we are working to grow this conversation to reach this point where there's intimate equality. And you know, I don't know why that we're raising this generation of girls, young women, who to have a voice and to expect equal treatment at work, at school, at home, intimately, and yet they go to CVS and there's nothing for them. Like how does that work? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And so, being able to answer that and be able to provide something that feels good for today's modern society is what we're all about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it reminds me of some articles I had read at some point that said, back when we were just saying vagina for, the vagina, the vulva, like we were just calling it vagina. And then, men have a penis and a head and a shaft and testes and all of this. And, some feminists said, when you don't give something a name, it just doesn't exist. And then it's just this unspoken about thing, and you can't, and like, I kind of hear an echo of that in what you're saying. Like when you walk in and all the products are just geared towards men and the penis, what is that doing psychologically? It's just like, and how many women report that sex is so penis focused? And, I always tell people when I lecture on sexuality that, less than 100 years ago, it was still in medical textbooks that women had no sexual desire. A healthy woman had no sexual desire. Women that were hysterical and sexual and masturbating, they were sick. But the healthy women had no sex desire. And this is in the medical textbooks. So we're still like, inching our way out of there going, we have a sex drive too. We have a right to be sexual. And then to fill that in, we need language, we need products, we need, there's so many things that are still taboo, like around sex, menstruation, protection, and
I know. I was listening to a podcast recently, just the other day. It was, maybe you know her, Elisa Vitti. She's wonderful. Yeah. She created this supplement, and for women, and throughout her research, she was sharing that every single bit of research in the dietary industry is predicated on the male circadian hormonal pattern. Everything was on the male body.
Yeah.
And, that's just, hello, it's the other half of the population.
Which is ironic since as embryos, we're all females.
Right? Yes.
One of my other interviews with Sherry Winston, she was talking about, she doesn't like to call the G-spot because, she likes to call it what it is, the urethral sponge, because it's named after a man. And she says we need to call the prostate the male urethral sponge, because she's like, we need something like named after the female parts instead of just all of these like male names and very suppressive terms. I always tell people too, pudendal nerve that innervates your whole pelvic floor from your anus to your perineum to your everything means the parts to be ashamed of, the pudendal nerve. And masturbation means to defile yourself with your hand. And we're still,
this is what we're perpetuating. Right. Yeah, I hope it's changing. I do hope it's changing. I think that, we are involved in this conversation and growing it and working to imbue these young people with this notion of intimate equality. And, we think Luwi is this perfect product to be this vehicle to really this tangible to grow this conversation and take this spark to a tremendous fire to get to where we are intimately equal. Just the most basics. The other day I gave my son a box of condoms and I said, you are in charge of your body's health. And, we talked for a while and then I walked away and I thought, when it's time to give my daughter a box, am I going to say, you have to rely on someone? No, I'm going to say, here's a box of Luwi. You are in charge of your body's health. And I think, this access to equal health products is a basic human right. I want them to be able to have access to equal products, and I want to enable them to be set up for success. And all of us want to have that opportunity.
Yeah, you're right. It's such a subtle thing, but so powerful. Like I think back on just different sexual experiences where, you're essentially saying as the woman, like, I'm ready for sex. I want to have sex with you. So put this on for me. And sometimes you open it, or sometimes, whatever, like, but there's this whole, but it's really dependent on them doing something. And then they decide when it stops, like they pull it off, and you're like, okay, well, you want to get another one. And they say, oh, it's too tight, or I can't feel anything. And they put another one on, or sex is over. But this is really like, it just shifts the energy, because you're like, I'm ready for sex, and like anytime, I don't have to wait for you to do anything. I'm not the victim of you taking it off, or of it slipping off. I mean, I once had a potential pregnancy scare. We didn't realize it slipped off. And, then you go, uh-oh, like I was, close to ovulation. So, with Luwi, you're very aware of where it is, because you can feel that ring on the outside of you. And if that's not there,
right,
not in place. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, we do have to be aware. That's a little different, but I would say we have to be aware with a condom too, even perhaps more so.
Yeah, I've checked it many times. Yeah, to make sure it's on still. Mm-hmm.
I was in London, and that stealthing, or all of the stealthing information came out, and
which means when someone removes the condom during sex.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, who is it? I read her book. I'm not that kind of girl. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on her name. I can see her in my head. Anyway, I was reading her book at the time, and there was a chapter on an experience. She was stealthed. Mm-hmm. And you walk in that aisle, and it just makes so much sense, right? Mm-hmm. It's time for an option for us, and we're excited to bring it to the U.S. It'll be a little bit of time, but we're in Europe today, and we'll be here soon. And
yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, I mean, I'm still, the kind of image I still have in my head is what you were talking about with pleasure inequality. And, we've especially seen that with the research and literature, like you had mentioned Peggy Orenstein on the phone, and her work to really show this pleasure gap, and that men are having orgasms with ejaculation and women aren't having orgasms. And, women are more likely to give oral sex to men than to receive it. And again, these are all just manifestations of this deeper message of, you're not supposed to be having sex. Sex is not okay. The man is more, it's more important that he be pleased. And, just all these stories that aren't true. And anything like this product that helps to bring that conversation. And I especially want the young people hearing this to be empowered to carry their own protection, different forms of condoms, including Luwi, have that as an option. Wear it when they go out to feel protected, empowered. Like, I mean, it's even fascinating just going to a party knowing you have that in you. You're like literally walking around going, I'm going to have sex. I mean, it's like sex isn't going to necessarily be something that happens to me. Like, I mean, it doesn't always happen, but you're going out owning the fact that you are there for sex, as opposed to like, oh yeah, I hooked up, or, like, no, I want to meet, I want to have sex tonight, or I know I'm going to have sex tonight, or I'm going on a date and it might lead to sex, so I'm prepared. And, just starting to think that way is a very different way to think about sex.
Yeah, I totally agree. I do like Peggy Orenstein's book. And I know, she mentions Karis Dennison in her book, and how she's really working to grow this conversation. And she runs these workshops for young people to be able to really imbue them with this idea of intimate equality, while also teaching them what that looks like. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's not enough to just say, yes, okay, we need that. But, okay, well, what does that really look like? Mm-hmm. And, Luwi is one way for it to look like that. Just as you're saying, I'm ready. This is what I want, and I'm going to be smart about it.
Yeah. Has Luwi been in any adult films yet?
No, I would love for it to be, though. We are in London, and there's a pretty good, we were at the Porn Awards in November, and we got nominated for Best New Product. So I think it's soon.
Yeah. Well, and there's also, have you heard of Make
Cindy Gallup, Make Love Not Porn.
Cindy Gallup, thank you. What's her website called again?
Well, she did just recently change it. It used to be Make Love Not Porn.
Make Love Not Porn, right? Yeah.
And I think she's, I think it's something different now, like.
Oh, is it?
Disruption or something. I'm not sure, but yeah.
She's like you. Yeah, she's disrupting industries that have been like the adult film industry, so male focused, and and all of that. I would love to see Luwi in both some traditional adult films, but also people, you know, there's such this huge trend of people uploading their own adult films, and that's kind of what her thing is all about. Like, let's look at real people having real sex, which includes all the fumbling around and the conversations and things like that. And I mean, I think these movies are being made by people already in relationship, but I always love to remind women that I'm talking to, and men, that sex is like fumbly and messy, and you communicate. It's not this thing where you just get really quiet like in the movies and everything just like you just kind of roll into bed, and it all like, you know, you have these conversations like, do you like this? Does that feel weird? I'm, you know, like I want to try a different position. I don't like that. And, you know, one of my partners at one point, the Luwi, he was like, oh, I just poked into the thing. We had to like adjust it. And, you know, it's like the realities of real sex. And then sometimes you're in that flow of like bliss and, you know, not speaking and all of that. But it's all of the above.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did have a conversation with a porn director who said, you mean I can show the shaft? And I said, yes. And be protected? I said, yes. So, you know, it's exciting in that regard too, for that industry. I think. That's what they want.
That. Cause they want to see, like, that's part of the fantasy is like, they're watching the penis penetrate something and they're imagining it's their own penis. And Luwi also, it covers a bit of the perineum and the labia, probably the labia minora. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So it does provide greater protection against STIs that are skin to skin transmitted, like herpes, right? And that's really essential. Condoms aren't doing that, right? And so, but I recently learned about a product that is specifically for that area, and her name, the founder is Melanie Crystal. I don't know if you've heard of her product called Laurels, but it's specifically designed to protect that area for oral sex and to prevent any, you know, fluid to fluid as well as skin to skin transmission. And it covers that whole area. I have not tried that. I'm sorry?
Like a dental dam, like just a piece of material.
I think, yes. I mean, that is another, like, who came up with that name? Like, really?
It's so disgusting.
With that name?
I didn't even actually hold one in my hand until last year. And I was like, this is embarrassing. I've been working in sexuality for years and I never used a dental dam because it sounds disgusting. Like,
oh, it does.
Really? That's a dentist or something. Yeah. It's just, and I found these like strawberry flavored dams. You could just throw them over any part of the body that you want to like make contact with, but have the protection with. So I'll have to look up the Laurels. That I haven't heard of that one, but yeah, for a lot of people that's important. If you have a partner who you know has herpes, or you're very concerned about herpes, or HPV.
You don't know. I mean, even if you don't know, I mean, that's the whole point, right? We're seeing it's 1 in 4, and the majority of the do not have symptoms. So the majority are asymptomatic, and I think the biggest issue is that people believe that they're safe, and it's just not that way anymore. It's you can't take a risk. So use something that feels good. And I mean, that's what we're all about, because who wants to go through that, right? None of us want to go through that.
Yeah, it's really not fun. I mean, as someone who has gone through, you know, different things and HPV, and like, you know, the amazing thing is your body will heal, and there's great medicine. And I mean, syphilis is something you really have to catch early, or it could have dire consequences. I mean, HIV is obviously dangerous, but only in certain forms of sex. But still, to even have anything, it's like it puts you through this whole thing, and the shame and the money, and you have to like go through it. And so if we can eroticize using products like this to, you know, that's what they did in the 80s after the you know, people went, what, I have to wear a condom now with sex? Like, this is so not sexy. And sex was suddenly linked with death and suffering. And I watched this great documentary about how specifically men in the gay community were like, we have to make this sexy. And so they did. And like, you know, and you can, and that's the cool thing as humans, like we can make things sexy. Like, come over here, I'm going to put your such and such on, or, you know, where we do it in a way, or it's even, we make the barrier sexy. Like, sort of in the same way that we put lingerie on and we're like, you can see me, but you can't see all of me. And like, you know, we can make that a really fun part of our sexual experiences. It just takes like changing it, you know, intention really.
Right. I think, and and that's the whole part of it, growing awareness to be able to help others know, hey, there's something else out there.
Mm-hmm.
This is for the other half. This is an alternative, and it will set you up for success. So check it out,
Mm-hmm.
and we hope that our branding is imbuing others with a sexy feeling, because that's what we want. That's what it should be. We want the conversation to be positive, and we want every experience to be as good as it can be. And be smart. I mean, it's just, that's how it is.
Women need options. I mean, when I talk to women, I've had women who say, I get yeast infections after I have sex with latex condoms, and the doctor says it's not from that, but I swear my vagina is off after. And I'm like, well, if that is what your body's telling you, like, screw whatever medicine says, like, listen to your body. And they don't even know there are other options that they can try. And again, like, I'm a 35-year-old woman. I still deal with the men and the not wanting to wear condom things. So, I mean, from being a teenager until we die, until we stop having sex, this is a part of the conversation. Like, what protection are we using? And we have to be mature adults about it. And now we have to raise our teenagers to be mature about it and to be conscious, like, take them to get healthcare early on. Cause like you said, I know a young girl recently who had chlamydia, it didn't get, and she didn't know she had it. And she had a cyst in her tube, a blocked tube, and they had to go in, and it was this big thing. And if she had been using a Luwi or a condom, it's like, it did get to become, she was hospitalized for it to take care of it. So we have to have this conversation with girls.
But the thing is, she's not rare.
Yeah.
Not rare. I mean, it's all, because of what I do, so many people come up to me and say, my son this, my daughter this, my friend this, my niece this. Yeah. And people have even texted me pictures of stuff. What is this? I am not an MD. I'm sorry. I know what that looks like, and my suggestion, but and so it is just, it's everywhere. Yeah. It's everywhere. And we've got to be able to we've got to set up for success. That's what we have to do. And it doesn't have to feel bad. It doesn't have to be desensitizing. It doesn't have to be constricting. It doesn't have to be interrupting. It doesn't have to require an erection. It can be chemical free, and it can feel good, and it can be in place 8 hours before you need it. And the latex, between 8 and 18% of the population is allergic to latex. And I remember when I was going through breast cancer, every question seemed, are you allergic to latex? Right. Are you allergic to latex? And I thought, well, I'm not, but geez, maybe I should be. Yeah. Because maybe this is just so bad for me.
This is bad. Well, and so one of the women I almost interviewed for the summit, she created Sustain condoms, that you probably heard of them. And what they promote is that when you're cooling the latex to make the condom, if you cool it slowly and then you rinse it, you actually get rid of these nitrosamines, which are carcinogens, cancer causing. But the biggest companies like Trojan, they want production. So they cool the latex fast. They don't rinse them. And this is the #1, big best-selling condom. So, I can't tell you how many times I've, had sex with men that have a Trojan, and that's what you have. So you use it. But there's like that little thing in the back of my mind that's like, the latex, when it cools, carcinogens, very absorbent tissue down there. And there was a study that came out of Stuttgart, Germany, where they were saying, well, actually, if you are using, because at first they said it's not enough exposure to do anything, but then, because you get carcinogens in your food and such, but then the study said, well, if you're using condoms regularly enough, it can actually lead to an amount that's noticeable. And so the polyurethanes is not latex, which is a really great option, an important option for people.
And no known allergens. It doesn't have any of that. So it's great.
What I like about it too is that because it's in, and if the man doesn't have an erection, which again is a big part of normal sex, we see this image of the woman's wet, the man has the erection, and they go for it. And the reality is there's playing, and there's touching, and there's oral sex, and you can have that in. And if he doesn't have an erection, he can give you oral sex. He can finger you. Like all these things can happen. And then when the erection is there, it's ready to go. There's not that that awkwardness that you talk about in your promotional film, like, okay, or quick before it's gone or whatever. Like it eases that transition between playing and for women, this is very important for a lot of women to reach higher levels of arousal. They need clitoral and labial stimulation and thighs and all of that. So I think the Luwi is great for that too.
And just knowing that, I think it enables you to relax.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know that you're going to be safe.
Yeah.
You got this.
Yeah.
You got your seatbelt on, right? I think that goes a long way.
Right. Which is also,
just to take it down a notch and just be, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. This is my choice. And I'm going to feel good.
Yeah. And women are, I think traditionally, we're the ones who are like thinking about all of that stuff more and more like in our heads, which is why we're less in our bodies. And I think this is a great segue to period sex, because as, someone who enjoys sex and, I get my period once a month because I don't, push it away with hormones or whatever. I talk to a lot of women that say they don't want to have sex on their period because it's messy. And so, I created the adult play mat for that so that you can throw something down on the bed. But then I realized your product actually can help to keep some of the blood back, which I've seen blog things where women have said, they stick cosmetic sponges in them to soak up the blood, or they try to masturbate before, pull the blood out. I mean, the reality is when you're having sex, blood, your cervix and your uterus are going to get stimulated. Your uterus contracts when you have an orgasm, it's going to release some blood. But I thought, oh, cool, the Luwi actually kind of could be something that women might enjoy during the time when they're menstruating, to kind of keep the blood aside and not have that in the sexual experience.
It's perfect. I mean, most have found it's best on lighter days.
Yeah.
I do know from, Facebook and reviews and everyone communicating with us that there are people who use it throughout their whole cycle, and it does save sheets.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice. Also because it has some lubrication in it, during that phase of our cycle, we need lubrication. I mean, blood is not a lubricant.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Some women have said, oh, I feel more wet and it's easier. But to me, it's so slippery and it's a different texture. And it's not always.
So Luwi, not only is it protecting and, preventing the sheets from ruining and keeping some back, but it also has that lubrication. So it feels a little better.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for disrupting this industry and bringing products for women. I can't wait to see what you come up with next. I'm sure there are going to be all kinds of variations.
Yeah, we have a couple of products on the docket.
Yeah.
Well, and can't wait to be here. That's our next step, right?
Yeah. It's going well in Europe. Can people sign up on your website to get? Do you have newsletters?
To be the first to know when we are here, and absolutely.
And we can pick up some when we go on vacation in Europe.
Yes,
at the store. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know. I go to Europe at least once a year, so.
Good. Are you? What country does the best job? Netherlands, Holland, Netherlands. Their education system starts with this gender identity program at the age of 5, and so that country, it's what we should model. They have the lowest STD rates, they have the lowest sexual assault rates, they have the lowest teen pregnancy rates, and it's all because the conversation starts, that level of intimate equality is already in the conversation at the age of 5.
Yeah, and you're a sexual being. You deserve pleasure and respect and protection.
Exactly.
Yeah, safety. Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, I lived in France, and they've got I was very proud to see the sexual education that they offer to young people too. The clinics were super easy to get into. If you had an issue, you just could walk in and get tested that same day. It wasn't like the Planned Parenthoods here where I still feel a little judged and and the wait time is hours. It was just oh, healthcare, that's convenient, It's nice to have healthcare.
In this country, $16 billion a year is still allocated to abstinence training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm no judgment. If that's something that's ideal for someone, then more power to them. I just think in today's society, it's different. It's not how maybe it once was. And we've got to change with that. I mean, we've all progressed.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be open to what that looks like and what products that new environment and new way of thinking needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
absolutely. Cool. Well, so if people want to find you, follow your work, hear about new products,
getluwi.com.
Okay.
Please follow us. Find us on social, Get Luwi, and GETLUWI. And yeah.
Wear your condoms, people.
Yes, exactly. Wear your Luwi.
Wear your Luwi. Let us wear it. Cool, Lisa. It was so fun chatting with you today. Thanks for your time and for all the great work you're doing.
You too, Dr. Warren. Take care.
Okay, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.